Hello everyone, my name is Uthers and welcome back to a second episode of Scrap Mechanic. Today, we are going to be building another kind of singular vehicle build. This one's going to be a little bit different, a little bit more boxy than probably something that I really wanted to come out. However, due to the subject matter, and I'm sure you guys know from the title of this video, we are making a city bus. You know, my girlfriend takes one of these pretty much every day to work, and I figured it would be pretty cool to try and make one. You're kind of jumping into the middle of the video with some of the base size kind of already laid out, though things are going to change a little bit as we progress and start getting parts added to this thing. Probably the hardest thing about it was to try and get the scale to be functional and accurate at the same time. I think, to be honest, that it's probably too wide of a vehicle to look really good, but on the interior side of things, I think it turned out pretty well. So at the moment, all I'm doing is trying to decide where the wheels are going to go, because again, wheel placement and the general length of the vehicle is super important, so you can see me chopping off part of the back end there. And as you know, this is a kind of a common bus design here, probably at least in my area, though I'm sure this is probably common throughout the world at this point. And it is a lower two-door kind of section, and then as you go to the back end of the bus, it kind of raises up because I believe the engine is housed back here, and the seats actually go up to one, clear the wheel well, and then two, to go over parts of the engine, because this is a snub nose type of vehicle with the driver's seat pretty much right up against the windshield on the front end. You'll notice that we do have kind of a pretty standard layout. I don't think it's 100% accurate. We got a 3-block wide kind of hallway going through the middle of it. We have a row of seats facing their backs to the windows, and then right across from them, sets of pairs of seats going back. You know, I probably would have really liked to have either 2 rows of either pair seats going all the way through, but that just made the vehicle really, really wide. The seats in Scrap Mechanic are probably wider than they look like they should be. There's no base game kind of seating element for like multiple kind of close together seating elements. These are all kind of passenger seats just kind of strung next to each other, and so there's this gap, and you can't get everything to kind of fit as compactly as you probably would like at this point. Just kind of working on the suspension of the vehicle. It's a simple vehicle in terms of function, right? You know, just 4 wheels and a little bit of a steering column. Probably one of my favorite thing about it, though, is the seat. The driver's seat is on its own suspension, and you kind of bob extra up and down on this thing when you drive it around. It makes me kind of think of those buses, because they do have kind of these very cushioned seats for the drivers, since they're in it pretty much all day. It's their job, and I'm sure they want to be at least somewhat comfortable sitting in the same position driving around town. We got, you know, kind of a black rubbery floor going along the base, and then we're going to color some blue into this as well. You'll notice that this build is going to be very boxy in general, and I'm not a big fan of boxy things. I'd rather things be detailed, whether that's redundant details or not. It's really, really hard, in my opinion, to get this right, so it's going to start off really boxy and then get a little bit more detailed near the end of this episode. But I figured first things first, get the chassis kind of laid out, so we have the wheel placement, the seats, and then start working on the doors, get the doors functional, and then see where we can go from there. You know, you just want to tackle one section of the build at a time and see where kind of it leads you, and deal with this, just the small chunks. And if you can keep doing that, what'll happen is over time, over a few hours, you can actually finish something. At this point, you'll notice messing a little bit with the hinges and how they are going to be working, realizing that this is actually going to need an extra hinge onto here to fold this 90 degrees, and then also 90 degrees again, the opposite way. So this door will actually fully collapse as if it's a normal kind of bus door. Of course, I'm about to add some clearance onto the floor here, just so that it actually goes a little bit more flush. The glass is just one of the glass blocks, nothing too fancy with that. It's functional and it works. The window pieces, in my opinion, are probably a little bit harder to use for these type of things than just standard window placement, but I guess you could try to get that to work if you had the time. I'm going for more of a basic look, but if you want to get very detailed, I'm sure you could probably do a better job than I could. So at this point, both doors are basically functioning. Just a little tweaks to the order of the rotations and the timing of it, because right now they're actually opening and closing pretty quickly. It might seem like their normal speed kind of here in the speed up vision, but I wanted it to be a little bit slower than that. Go ahead, rebuild the floor and the staircase into the bus a little bit more. And at this point, drive it around, because, you know, I like to drive the vehicles around a lot when I'm building it, not only to procrastinate, but also to make sure, you know, things are functioning when they're driving, making sure that's still usable. And here, we're gonna go ahead and try and lay out the windows. I originally wanted to do kind of a, I guess, I don't know the best term for bus parts or things like that, but I wanted an upper window to be able to like slide down, something that you might see there, but it just didn't look too good. So I ended up scrapping that and just going with these vertical windows for now. We do end up replacing them later with some of the proper windows that are in the game, but this does help with scale. Whether you keep it simple and then you just keep building onto it, and then you're free to kind of tear it apart and add detail where you might see fit. So at this point, the shape of the bus is pretty much there. You got the full interior shaping in, and you have this rough skeleton. We're gonna go ahead and start building the wheel wells, very similar to the Jeep build that we did. This is how I do wheel wells. Generally, my tires will always sit about a block out from the vehicle, and that kind of gives you a little bit of extra space just to add a little bit of a skeleton on the side and make it look somewhat interesting, I think, than maybe the default. And I wanted this to be a little bit more of just a base scrap mechanic look. I wasn't gonna copy an exact kind of city bus. I could have probably tried to get all the angles right and maybe found probably parts that would have fit the real life references a little bit better, but sometimes I just enjoy scrap mechanic for its own art style, and embracing that, making it look kind of thrown together, cobbled in a way, I think it, shows a little bit of the spirit of the game in a sense, and can look pretty nice when you can get a nice clean look to it. So here, those are kind of the finished side windows. They're a little bit smaller than I planned out, which is totally fine. This thing ended up becoming like a really big vehicle that I did not expect it to. But the height, I think, is at least a little bit accurate. I didn't quite get the curve of the roof correct. And you'll probably notice that when we're driving it around, it has kind of more of a flat top rather than a perfect arch kind of going across there. But overall, it works. At this point, we're going to try and see what little effects we can get onto the side of the body just to make it look a little bit interesting. I decided to go with this kind of cross panel using these girders and just kind of bulk it out where we can to make it look either armored or just layered in a way so that the sheet metal just doesn't look super thin and boring. So that's what we're kind of doing there. At this point, realizing that, we can get rid of a little bit of a block along the top rim, which we'll probably clear out. But also going through the inside, I decided to get some of these handrail placements in there just so that they're at least represented. They're not functional, of course. There's no way to grab these, and I think our character is a little too short to reach them really in the first place. But we do want the options. It's not like we have the leather loops or cloth loops hanging down that you can grab those either. It would just be straight up grab the bar and hold on to dear life as the crazy guy drives the bus around. Which makes me think, I had a crazy bus driver in high school, guys. crazy. Like reversing on ramps to go to school. It was pretty interesting a lot of days where we had the crazy bus driver Chip. And I don't know, maybe you guys have some bus stories, but I have quite a few. Him racing people on the highway. It was an interesting time, I would say. We got some of this netting. I think this is like a fence piece going in here as some of the dividers from like the upper section, from the doorway as well. And these are like little barriers to kind of protect the people sitting, you know, produce little walls and things in the bus, maybe to prevent the driver from something. I really don't know what they're for. I just know they exist and I tried to capture it in a little bit of a fashion. We're gonna add a little bit of trim, of course, along the whole kind of front and side frame. Make that look a little interesting, using a lot of little pieces to kind of inlay in there. These aren't really functional storage compartments. Yeah, I know a lot of buses will have those kind of tucked into the side that you could open up and get underneath the seating for either probably mechanical reasons or storage reasons. But in this case, not really enough room to do that. Well, that's kind of half true. It's more like I didn't have time to do all like the side little compartments. So I just wanted to abstractly represent them here. And really there's no gameplay reasons for it anyways. Really Scrap Mechanic to me is at the moment just build a vehicle, make it look cool, and drive around in it currently. There's no real utility to any of these parts, but hopefully that'll get added at some point and the game will become a little bit more in depth as stuff continues to grow. Gonna go ahead and add a little bit of a front bumper, some front headlights, of course, even though there's no day-night cycle. But what's a vehicle without headlights, you know? Probably a death trap. We get some AC units going into the back wall, you know, just to make it look like there's some airflow going in there. Some power units, some other things that you can kind of inlay in here to make it look a little bit more industrial than maybe just flat coloring. We do this a lot in the Planet Coaster buses as well. If you guys have seen those builds in Alpine Odyssey, you know, kind of pulling a little bit from that, and also, of course, reference images always go a long way whenever you build anything complicated, such as a vehicle. Some brake lights, we don't color them red or anything. I kind of wanted to keep this to be the raw colors of the parts, just to make it look a little bit, again, thrown together and scrappy, and just like the game. So I think that turned out pretty well. Sadly, the doors kind of break up the symmetry on the left and the right side, so we can't really mirror that 100%. And you know, you kind of have to come up with unique solutions for each side. But you know, I think it overall turned out pretty well when you think about it. Gonna add a little bit of a curve for the roof, and then just find a really large piece to kind of seal it up. Again, this kind of adds to the scrap nature of the build, but also it just speeds it up. I don't have to worry about trying to find the exact piece. It gives it a little bit of a default texture, and overall, you know, looks okay, I think. We're gonna add this upper shape to this bus. I don't know what these are for. I know some of them, you know, from running buses myself, they could be from escape hatches. They could be another AC unit type of thing. If you guys know what these are for, at the top where the bus kind of has that dome-ish or somewhat extra layer of detail, let me know in the comments down below, because I have no clue, and apparently I'm too lazy to Google it. And just a little bit more detail. So at this point, the bus is basically done. I'm gonna go ahead into real time. You guys will get to see the thing drive around, and of course, if you want it, you can get it from the Steam Workshop as soon as I fix the door. All right, so here we are taking a look at our finished little bus. It kind of makes me think back to the early days of playing Scrap Mechanic with you guys when we built that semi-truck and the semi-truck trailer. It's kind of the same mentality when you're building such a large vehicle. And this is the largest vehicle that I've made since kind of coming back to the game. I think it looks pretty good. It has a good presence to it. It's not, you know, 100% accurate. I would say the back end should be like maybe a block longer. I think the wheels are about a quarter front end and a quarter left on the back end. So this back wheel either needs to go forward a block or the back end needs to go out a block, but that's okay. That's a minor thing. It's relatively low to the ground, makes it easy to get in and out of. You get a lot of glass on this, so you can see through it, and adds a good bit of detail just inherently because you can see into the vehicle, which I really like, especially this row of windows on this side here. Definitely works. We get a nice big window. I will say our driver's seat is probably a little bit too far to the right. I probably should have centered the driver's seat a little bit better, but moving it now is kind of out of the question just because the whole thing is built around it. But if you guys want, you can definitely edit it to fit your own world. So there is a button on the outside to open both doors, and again, both doors do close and function at the same time and the same speed. You can see we have a hinge, I think down here, rotating it 90 degrees that way, backwards. We have a hinge up there to rotate one block out 90 degrees to the left, and then another hinge in the glass there to rotate the rest of this kind of doorway 90 degrees, again, the opposite direction. So you can kind of get a 180 worth of motion in 3 hinges there. We get a nice kind of console seating area for the driver. Again, held up by that singular spring up there. Makes it nice and bouncy for him. A little bit of a ticking machine. You know, oh, okay, I don't have enough money apparently. We get the first initial seating area, some wheel wells for the tires, and you know, you can kind of grab a seat. I wish I could have fit 3 seats here, but simply just not enough room with the block count. I would have to either get rid of this section of the wheel well, which wouldn't look good, or move the door over a block, which just wouldn't function with the wheel there either. So sadly, not all of it. And also buses don't have seatbelts, at least not here in America. I don't know about anywhere else, but you guys can let me know if that's right or not. Upper guardrail, exit signs, of course. Gotta have those. And then the little back raised section. And I think the bus looks pretty good from the interior perspective, especially. You know, you can see outside, you got access to the windows. It can be a little bit of a pain to get around in the vehicle at times. Maybe I could have made it a block or two higher, but overall, I think it functions nicely. So we'll go over to the driver's seat and we'll drive in first person here just initially. Shut the doors. Passengers are in. All right, and we'll just go ahead and putt off. It's not the fastest vehicle in the world. It is pretty heavy of a vehicle, I would say. You can really hear the shocks working, and you can really notice that the seat that we are sitting on is jostling a lot, absorbing a lot of the extra force here. So having it basically dual suspension for the driver is probably a really good, comfortable thing for him. Looking back, you can make sure, you know, everyone back there, all the people back there, I'm pretty sure all my subscribers are back there. We got a nice look out the window. Again, the seat, I think, could be moved over just a little bit. If we zoom out, kind of see the bus, how it kind of handles. It's okay. I would say the wheels are a little glitchy on it, but that's kind of scrap mechanic anyways. You can open the doors on the move, which is good. I'm always happy with that one. Sometimes when I make doors, they don't function after the vehicle drives around, but this one does, and that's always a bonus. So we'll kind of creep up through here. You could make the suspension a little bit more stiff if that's something you want to do, but again, that's something I'll leave up to you. So with that, we're done with this episode of Scrap Mechanic. Hope you guys enjoyed the build process. If you have anything you want me to make in the game, let me know in the comments down below. Go ahead and subscribe for more creative goodness such as this, and maybe hop on the bus as we go through the journey with the channel. Join us in the Discord down in the description of this video down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.